Good day. This webcast is called Convert to Web Services. We assume you already know the differences between regular TRACS and web services. This webcast will walk you through an FAQ called How to Convert to Web Services. The best way to find that FAQ is through the TRACS web page shortcut. In TRACS, go up to the Help tab, go over to the Badger TRACS on the web button and click it. Locate the FAQs link in the navigation panel. You will see a list of FAQs. Scroll down until you find How to Convert to Web Services. All TRACS users can view these FAQs using this method. Your IT staff will need the skills and knowledge related to web applications, including configuring IIS, firewall, and proxy servers, along with VPNs. What are the requirements to convert to web services? Windows Server 2008, R2, x64 with IIS 7 or above. Windows Server 2012, R2, x64, also with IIS 7 or above. And currently, Windows Server 2016 and 2019, also with IIS 7 or above, work too. You need .NET Framework 3.5 and 4.0 full installs. Processor like a quad core, 2 gigahertz or higher, 8 gigs of RAM or more. Hard disk drive should be 100 gigabyte or more with 50 gigabytes free. The databases, SQL Server 2008 R2 x64 or higher. Servers set up as virtual machines are acceptable. Mobile units must have broadband access available most of the time. As the red highlighted note states, the TRACS Help Desk does not provide specific advice on configuring IIS, firewall, or proxy servers. Your agency must be responsible for maintaining the required skill set. The Help Desk knowledge is limited to the information presented here. Most of the agencies we work with have little to no issues when migrating to web services if they read the FAQ completely and then follow it step by step. We also suggest scheduling a conference call with the TRACS Help Desk to get all your questions answered before starting the migration. While working through the migration, all your office computers must be logged out of TRACS. Mobiles can be used, but they should not end shift any forms until the process is completed. Depending on the amount of squad cars your agency has, you should plan on at least half the day for the migration, and it's best not to start it on a Friday or the weekend. An important thing to remember is you don't need all your mobiles switched over to web services immediately. We suggest switching only 1 or 2 in the beginning. This way you will have time to work out any issues you may come across. Let's start going through the FAQ. Step 1, request a web services unlock key. This will be used during the installation of the TRACS server baseline. This can be accomplished by emailing the TRACS Help Desk with your agency name and TRACS serial number. Feel free to do this a couple weeks in advance. We need to download the server edition of TRACS. The easiest way to get the server edition is by using the link in the FAQ and downloading a zip file. You can also call the Help Desk and request a copy if you are having issues with downloading it yourself. Step 3. Extract the contents of the zip file to a location and folder of your choosing. You will only need this server edition one time, but we recommend copying it to your TRACS network distribution folder. The server edition is only used on the master computer. Do not run this version on the office or mobile computers. In steps 4 through 6, we will need this done before the day of migration. These steps will need to be completed by your IT staff. The TRACS help desk will not be able to install nor configure the required software. Step 4, we will install at least Windows Server 2008 R2 X64 or newer server operating system. Step 5, we need to install .NET Framework 3.5 Service Pack 1 and 4.0 full versions. Depending on how the server was built, many times the server will already have .NET installed. You should check to make sure that .NET 3.5 compatibility features are enabled too. If you do not see any .NET Framework installed, then you will need to install this before moving to the next step. In step 6, we are making sure that the IIS server is installed and working. Start the IIS server to verify that it is installed properly, and then stop the IIS server. We will walk through the configuration process later in this video. It is important not to start step 7 until the day of migration. Failure to do so could result in missing forms. If you are moving to a new server, we need to copy that current TRACS network directory files to the IIS server. Make sure you are copying the TRACS folder instead of moving it. If you move the TRACS folder, you will no longer be able to log into TRACS. Write down the location of your old TRACS network folder. Don't assume you will remember it later. On the IIS server, create a folder named TRACS and place it in the program data folder on the C drive. It should look like the path highlighted. Failure to place the TRACS folder into the program data folder will result in future updating issues. Step 7C. Copy the contents of your old TRACS network folder to C drive, program data, TRACS. Once again, make sure to copy and not move them. Step 7D. Delete C drive, program data, TRACS, settings INI file. As you can see in the FAQ, we have a typo. It should say C drive, program data, TRACS, settings, and then settings INI. So we will get that corrected and updated for you guys. As you can see here, we're going to the C drive, program data, TRACS, settings, and in that folder is a settings INI file that we want to delete. Do not skip this step. If this file is not deleted, you will no longer be able to log into TRACS. Step 8, installing the server edition baseline. Just make sure you have your TRACS serial number found on your welcome letter and your web services unlock key. Contact TRACS help desk if you can't find either. Okay, let's run the baseline. Let's right click and run as an admin. Once the installation screen comes up, we will click Next. Next again. Now we need to enter our registration information. Enter your agency name. We have an agency name here. The entity is always going to be the number 6, which represents the state of Wisconsin. Finally, enter your serial number. This is found on your agency welcome letter. Don't confuse this with your web service unlock key. We will enter that shortly. Click Next. choose Full Install, click Next, choose Server, and click Next. Now enter a 3 or 4-digit, all numeric, TRAX machine ID number from your installation worksheet. Remember, machine numbers must be unique throughout your agency. Do not double up machine numbers, and we can click Next now. And Next again. Check the TRAX Web Services box. Enter the unlock key provided to you by Badger TRAX. Change the INET pub address if required by your agency. Click Next. Click the radio button for under the Windows Common Application Data folder, or the recommended way, and click Next on the Application Data location screen. Check the box for Advanced Install and click Next. Install will run. Click Next again. And finish. Now you need to register your new master computer with Badger TRAX. You will have to call or email the TRAX help desk and get your master computer switched. This could take time because the help desk could be busy. Once you get a reply from the TRAX help desk that your master computer has been switched, you may continue to step 10. This step is simply performing the normal update process. You start TRAX, you will receive notifications in your Windows taskbar that the files are downloading. When you receive the notification that the download is complete, you exit TRAX, then restart TRAX, and click Yes to install the updates. Click Close once the update has completed. Now, step 11, configuring IIS. This step is where the TRAX help desk can't help you much and you need your IIS specialist. Most agencies don't have problems with this step. The following items are important to the configuration of the IIS server. You will want to disable Windows Firewall or make exceptions for the web server ports, 80 or 443. 80 would be HTTP, 443 is going to be HTTPS. Ensure that the web server IIS role is activated on the server. IIS 7.0 is required. Ensure that the ASP.NET and WCF are enabled. The following two commands will make sure ASP.NET and WCF are enabled. These commands will be run using the command prompt. Step 12. Configure TRAX Web Services. This is the step which causes the most problems, mainly setting up the identity. We emphasize this in a red note to not skip steps B and C. Make sure you have the correct permission, otherwise web services won't work. This step will help the IT staff configure TRAX Web Services to run on the IIS server. You add a new application pool in IIS Manager named TRAX Web Services. in advanced settings for the TRAX Web Services application, confirm that .NET Framework version is 4.0 or better. You can see these circled here on the FAQ. Confirm enabled 32-bit applications is true. Enable load user profile. Set the identity and here you use one of the built-in accounts or use a custom account. If using a custom account, make sure to use the domain name in front of the username if necessary. Identity account must have access to the TRAX directories installed in task 1-2C of the installation guide. Identity account must have access to the network share for the SQL Server databases. Under Sites, convert TRAX Web Services to an application, choosing TRAX Web Services Application Pool. Follow best practices to secure your web server. For example, only allow access to your VPN. If using SSL, install a certificate for SSL in IIS. Edit the bindings for the default website in IIS to include HTTPS, and specify that the certificate you installed in the previous step be used for this binding. Start the TRAX Web Services application pool. Note, you can test connectivity to the web application by pasting the web services URL in a web browser. For example, http://mytraxserver.com/TRAX Web Services, you should see a response that the web service is running. If you don't get web service is running as a response, troubleshoot and get the IIS server configured so that that response shows up. Now let's manually change a squad car to be a web services client. On a mobile computer, navigate to the C drive, Program Data, TRAX, Settings folder. As you see here in the window, that's where we are at. And look for a file named settings.ini. Open this file, edit the settings.ini file by changing the I/O section to type 3. Now, the second section to change is called TRAX Web Service. Add your IIS URL after the URL line as shown in the video. You will put your URL after the URL equals. By manually changing only one mobile, we can test the functionality of the web services setup. This allows us to keep your existing setup working, just in case there are issues with the web server, firewall, or network configuration. The agency will be able to function until the problems have been resolved. If you move to a new server, step 13, if you moved to a new server and created a new network share, all Windows users on regular TRAX Office computers must have read, write, create, and delete to the new share location. Also, web services clients need read access to the distribution folder in the new network share. Step 14. disable the start and end shift communication instructions. As we know, once you switch to web services, there is no longer a need to end shift. Also, the end shift button will be removed. Log into TRAX Configuration Manager. You will be unchecking the active box for all 4 instructions that control the end shifting. As you can see here, under the Transmission tab, you click the Communications button. Expand Communication Instructions, and you see 4 network end shift instructions. Each of these instructions will need to be made inactive, and that's simply done by unchecking the active checkbox on each of them. Marking all of these inactive, and then clicking the Apply button and OK. Step 15. If you don't have an RMS, you can skip this step. Otherwise, make sure your RMS destination paths are still correct. The destination location doesn't have to be on the IIS server. If users still have permission to the destination that is set up in TRAX, the files will transfer when you transmit forms just as they did before. You should still be in the Configuration Manager. Communication Editor, expand the items named Transcom. You should have a setting for each form. In this example, we will highlight ELSI to RMS. Make sure that the Communications Options tab is selected. Review the destination folder field for the correct destination. Repeat this process for each form going into your RMS. Whether it's NTC, crash, warnings, check the destination paths for those forms. Step 17. Step 17 refers you to the TRAX Installation Guide Task 3-1. Toward the end of that task is a section for web services that deals with changing the settings on your master computer. It explains how to set up these 3 fields. On your computer, on your TRAX master machine, open up your distribution. And as you see here, we have the distribution file open. Towards the bottom of the distribution, we want to set up 3 fields. The first one, we want to check Web Client option. Say, put a yes there. Add your IIS URL path. And finally, we will set up a transaction timeout period. This transaction timeout period is the amount of time a squad car will try to connect to the web services URL before opening in offline mode. Once the squad car has a valid path to the URL, the MDC will automatically change to online status, and any newly created forms will upload at this time. Generally, we set this to 30 seconds. Okay, step 18. This refers you to task 4.1c in the installation guide. You will be reconfiguring your distributions to be used within your web services environment. Make sure to double check your mobile and office distribution paths because you could have changed the TRAX network folder locations. As you see here, those are your mobile and office distribution folder paths. To update those paths, just click the Get Folder button located on the far right side. Then navigate down to the linked attachment location field. And you can see it brings those paths in to those fields when you click Get Folder. You can see those changed. So now we'll navigate down to the linked attachment location field. This will have to be updated by clicking the Import button on the far right side as well. Step 19. This is only necessary if you have created a new file share. This step requires the latest TRAX baseline to be run on all Office computers in order to point to the new TRAX network folder location. Failure to perform this step on an Office computer will result in not being able to log into that Office computer. Now, a good idea is to rename your old TRAX network location so it will not be accessible. This will serve a couple good things. First, Office computers won't be able to log in if they haven't run the baseline and changed the network location. Secondly, if a mobile end shifts by mistake before you have time to update them, the end shift will fail because the mailbox folder doesn't exist. Step 20. This step gets confusing, so we are just going to summarize it. You should contact the TRAX help desk to get a better explanation if needed. This step checks to see if your agency is using auto update settings for all your computers. If your agency is using this feature, you will have a configuration wizard form for every TRAX computer. Each configuration wizard form used by mobiles will have to be updated. If you don't use this feature, skip this step because the mobile distribution will update your mobile web services fields. In conclusion, we suggest you read the whole FAQ completely before starting this task. Another good idea is to schedule an appointment with us to answer any questions you may have before you start. Thank you for watching.